Good morning, everyone. If you would please be seated, we'll get the meeting started. Welcome to the deliberative session of the annual meeting of the Kearsarge Regional School District. My name is Derek Lick. I'm your moderator today. The protocol is we'll be following the agenda with each of the warrant articles that are on the warrant for the vote later in March. We'll start today with a Pledge of Allegiance. So I'll ask everyone to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. As you'll see today, we have members of the school board present, as well as of the municipal budget committees. I know we're waiting for another member to come from one of the budget committees. She'll be here shortly. I would like to start the meeting today with Mr. Bartholomew has some general announcements, and then we'll move into each of the warrant articles, starting with the operating budget. So Ken.
All set, thank you. Thank you, good morning. I wanted to acknowledge two of our Kearsarge district employees that plan to retire at the end of the school year. Mr. Rupert Leeming, a social studies teacher at Kearsarge Regional High School, and Mr. Michael Lacrosse, a custodian at Bradford Elementary School. Both gentlemen will be finishing their 20th year in our district when they retire. And we want to thank them for their dedication and wish them a happy retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. With that, folks, what we'll do is turn to Article 1. The way we'll proceed today, I will read the article, then we'll have a member of the school board speak to it. Then we'll open the floor and allow anybody to come up, ask any questions, provide any comments. If you do that, you'll just want to give us your name and what town you are from. So let's start, if we can, with Article 1. Article 1 reads as follows. Bear with me. To see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate the Municipal Budget Committee's recommended amount of $51,144,587 for the support of schools, for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment for the statutory obligations of the district. The school board recommends $51,144,587. This article does not include appropriations voted on in other warrant articles. This warrant article asks the voters to raise and appropriate for the support of schools, the salaries of school district officials and agents, and the statutory obligations of said district, and to authorize the application against said appropriation of such sums as are estimated to be received from state sources, together with income, the school board to certify to the selectmen of each town of Bradford, New London, Newbury, Springfield, Sutton, Warner, and Wilmot, the amount to be raised by taxation by said towns. And I believe Ken Bartholomew is going to speak to this warrant article, which is for the operating budget for the schools.
Yes. Thank you. The school board recommends this warrant article 7-0, and the municipal budget committee recommends it 8-0. The 2023-24 operating budget proposed by the Kearsarge Regional School Board and the Municipal Budget Committee of $51,144,587 is an increase of approximately $3,539,526, or 7.44% from the 2022-23 budget. The areas of increase within the school board's operating budget are the result of a variety of factors that we explain in the following paragraphs. First, wages and fringes. The requested budget for the 23-24 school year represents a net increase of 1 teacher FTE, or full-time equivalent. Added were 2 FTEs for the new Bradford pre-kindergarten location, and reduced was 1 FTE for a nurse at Simons Elementary School in Warner. Increased 0.2 FTE for an elementary school counselor, and reduced 0.2 FTE for the high school art department. In addition, 1 FTE custodian was added for the New London Elementary School and the Professional Development Center in New London. As a result, the wage line for employees requires an increase of approximately $803,381, or 22.7% of the total budget increase. It also reflects an increase in teacher wages based on the collective bargaining agreement that was approved by the voters in past years. The actual increase in health benefit costs for 23-24 was, unfortunately, a 14% increase from the current health effective rates. Based on this increase, health benefits alone represent 18.24% of the total budget increase, or $645,616. Included under other payroll benefits are dental, life, long-term disability, workers' comp, insurance, taxes, workshops, and tax-sheltered annuities. The overall other payroll benefits increase represents 1.85% of the total budget increase, or $65,328. New Hampshire retirement system decreased 3.08%, or $108,953, due to a one-year reduction in employer percentages paid to the New Hampshire retirement system. Out-of-district costs. Our out-of-district costs for the 23-24 school year are estimated to be an increase of $50,000, or 1.41% of the budget increase at this point in time. Each year, out-of-district special education costs are very fluid and are driven by a variety of factors. Those factors include the ability of our local staff to meet the needs of intensive behaviorally or medically challenged students, families who move into the district, and the costs associated with delivering highly specialized services in environments outside of the district whose costs continue to rise. We make every attempt to meet each child's needs in the least restrictive educational environment here at the local level. There are times, however, when the child's special needs exceed our local capacity to meet them. In addition, federal law requires us to provide for those needs until the age of 22. Placements for out-of-district services can range from $80,000 per student to upwards of $300,000, depending on the residential requirements. Other operating costs. Included in this area are textbooks, technology, contracted services, supplies, repairs, replacement equipment, capital improvements, new equipment, furniture, dues and fees, printing, telephone, copiers, assessment, and others. These costs reflect a total budget increase of approximately 32.57%, or $1,152,771, much of which is capital improvements. Other expenses. Transportation represents a 5.52%, or $195,392 budget increase, and utilities, bonds, lease payments, and property insurance budget increased by approximately 16.59%, or $587,384. Food service represents an increase in budget of 1.04, or $36,842. Federal funds represents an increase of 3.16%, or $111,765 of the increase. Note, all federal dollars appropriated are offset by federal matching funds. In other words, federal dollars appropriated are matched by federal revenue dollars. So the result is no effect to the local tax rate. And then you see we have an article, or a chart that breaks all that down, two charts actually, one on each page, that breaks each down by category.
All right, thank you very much. Now's the opportunity for those of you who wish to have any comments or ask any questions to come to the front. Thank you. Come on down. Just let us know your name and your town, please.
Andrew Pinard, Bradford.
Thank you.
Once again, I would like to thank all of our elected officials for the work that you've done in preparing these budgets and for providing for our students. These are challenging times, even post-pandemic, as some would call it, post-pandemic, and the funding issues are rather substantial. I have 2 points, one that is specific to this question and one that is related to this question. I wanted to draw or highlight attention to the New Hampshire state retirement reduction. The state, despite historic revenue coming into the state from a variety of sources, made the choice to decrease public funding of public education, specifically in this area, to the retirement system, which is a significant portion of the growth of this budget. So when you go to the polls, please bear in mind that the state is continuing not to appropriately fund education in a way that supports your local property taxes. You are being asked to do more with less every year, not just specifically in the retirement aspect here of the retirement system, but you may also notice that the school choice options went from a funding level that was very, very conservative at less than $1 million to $8 million. Funds are being diverted on a regular basis away from public education. It is having a significant impact on local schools. Kearsarge, thankfully, we are one of the more self-sustaining districts in some ways than others in our state, but I work in Claremont and I have friends who work in Franklin, and we're seeing portions of our population, our student population in this state, suffering with significant mental health issues as a result of the disproportionate funding in this state. So it's not enough to be aware of what happens in Kearsarge. It's really important that you keep an eye on what's happening statewide with education funding, because this is going to be a continued process unless you hold your state legislators and your elected officials in the corner office accountable for making sure that they fund equitably all of the districts in the state. Thank you for your service and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to Article 1? Any questions or comments? Charlie, come on up. Please announce your name and your town, please.
Charlie Forsberg, Sutton. One quick comment on to begin. I've been in the habit of parking out here, get oriented, I guess. Maybe it's down here. And when I came up to the door, it was locked. So I had to walk all the way around the building. There's a little bit of an effort for some people, I noticed, to walk that far for that distance. So I'm not sure that there was good planning on somebody's part to make that difficult for people to get here. I understand there's more parking down here, but there's no signs telling people where to park. That's just a comment.
Thanks for your comment, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Has there been any bonds paid off this year that reduced the budget in any way whatsoever? I'm not sure where the bond issues are.
I believe the answer to that is no. The next bond is paid off in 3 years, which would be the middle school bond.
The HVAC bond.
Oh, the HVAC bond.
The smaller one.
Small one. And then the next year is the middle school bond.
Would that be the last bond paid off, as far as we know at this time? As far as I should know.
Yep, that's right.
So there's 2 bonds yet to go.
Yep.
Okay. Has the student population changed any in the district, and just more or less what it is right now? It was about 1,800 last year.
The 10-year projections have been very stable, 1,750 kids for the last 10 years and in the upcoming 10 years, to the extent that we can predict 10 years out, because a bunch of those kids aren't born yet. We have been very stable, and that makes planning a lot easier for the district. So what we know, we are very stable, fluctuations probably within 100 students up or down.
Okay, well, I just noticed on their wages and fringes that you have some increases there. Usually they're driven by population increases too, I guess, but there's also shifting in that matter. I always thought that the age of responsibility for the SPED program was age 21. It's now 22.
It changed last year.
Somebody's behind it.
It was a vote by the legislature, right?
Well, that was national. That's the federal, right?
No. Each state decides itself, and New Hampshire was one of the outliers with the 21 years.
So they've increased it to age 22.
Correct.
And at the same time, they've reduced some of the benefits to the retirement program and so on.
There is a 1-year state contribution to retirement. As you probably remember, it used to be, I believe, it varied, but 45% was the highest. When I joined the school board, it was reduced over the years to 0, but there's a one-time contribution for this budget of, I think, 7.5%, but only 1 year. So we do get the benefit of a state contribution of 7.5% of our costs for state retirement, which is why it's a decrease for this budget.
Does that vary year to year in terms of the number of retirements that occur? In other words, is it just sort of a standard percentage-wise or whatever across the board regardless?
We're told what we need to contribute based on the performance of the New Hampshire retirement system, and I believe there's a factor related to our specific number of retirees and the amount being paid out, right?
There are two rates.
Not for what? Not for, I guess not for the calculation, not for the percentage calculation.
Okay, well,
it's not something that we have.
unfortunately, the state does very poorly investing its funds. I think that's a fact that I've seen before. So, the only other thing I have to say is just the operating costs seem a little bit on the high side, but
Yeah, that's true. It's unfortunate, but if you'll recall, last year in the high school renovation bond that was proposed and did not get the 60% vote that was needed, we said that there were several items that needed to get fixed that were included in the project price. Those costs have now come home to roost. There are boilers that need to be replaced. That can be from $300,000 to $500,000 each. There's a lot of maintenance that needs to be done. There's fire suppression systems in 2 of the elementary schools that we have committed to correct at the urging of the local fire department and fire inspectors. And we really don't have any choice with regard to these things. We can't run a school district without heat. We need to make sure that it works. Those are high expenses. We will be probably taking money out, both out of budget savings at the end of this year to cover some costs and out of the trust funds in order to cover some costs. And that actually helped reduce, believe it or not, this operating budget to where it is now. Otherwise, it would be even higher.
okay, well, it might be good to point out this is an appropriation budget. Where the money comes from is yet to be determined. In other words, you could have money set aside already for some of these purposes. What's the name of the company that takes care of the...
It used to be Honeywell, and now we use
Siemens.
Siemens? Okay, I saw that name, and I wondered what happened there.
We changed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Now's your opportunity on Article 1, the operating budget. All right, going once, going twice. Yes, come on up. Either one.
Morning.
Morning, welcome.
Mark Dowd from Bradford.
Sorry, into the microphone.
Mark Dowd from Bradford. Oops,
Thank you.
Sorry for yelling. Yeah, I had a quick question. You just brought up the capital expense of the school from last year, and it's kind of part of that question. I understand, I'm a facility manager, so I understand some of the fire suppression and the fire codes that are in the boiler system, of course. My question is, for a capital expense, that wasn't rolled into that?
So last year we had a bond proposal for high school renovation, but it also included a lot of renovations of infrastructure and underlying systems. That bond did not pass, so we have no money from the bond to cover that. So we need to make repairs out of the operating budget.
Yeah, I understand that.
Or out of the trust funds, or both.
My question was, usually capital expenses are brand new construction, not necessarily repairs.
No, these are repairs.
Yeah, okay.
Are there any new construction that's in this budget?
Construction of a playground in Bradford with the, you have seen probably the handout with the new preschool program for the southern part of the district. So a playground, it could be construction cost is in the budget.
The building itself, though, is paid for with federal ESSER funds.
Okay. I just wanted clarity on how the expense of the fire suppression system was in a new construction versus a repair of the old.
They're both in existing elementary schools,
Okay.
New London and Simons in Warner.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for your question.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I'm an old Bob Wright from the community of Sutton. One is a procedural question. towns normally use CRs, or capital reserves, and you use the term trust funds. What is the difference between the two?
I don't think there really is. I think it's just nomenclature.
Okay, because this is important. The reason I ask the question is that with a capital reserve, it's allocated for a specific project.
So we don't, our capital reserve or trust fund for building repairs is just that broad. It's for building repairs. So the terms of the trust or the capital reserve fund are set by the voters when the trust is created or amended, and that's what it's limited to.
Okay. My concern is the broadness, because you can, what's that expression? There are lies, damn lies, and statistics. And using that is, I would like to dress that up over the years a little bit so that at least we can follow.
Larry, do you have the language for the trust funds?
Yeah.
No, I mean the actual language in the.
I think it's pretty much from here for the purpose of.
Yeah, so this one is particularly relevant to the building trust fund, the school buildings maintenance expendable trust fund, for the purpose of repair, unanticipated utility costs, and maintaining the school buildings and equipment.
Okay.
And that's what the voters approved. I wasn't around when.
No, I understand. I was reading statistics, and this came from actually the United States Department of Education from 2000 to 2009 through 2019. Increase of students, 7.6%. Increase of teachers, 8.7%. Increase of administrators, 87.6%, which is 10 times the amount. What do administrators do?
Did you notice how quickly he passed that microphone?
I noticed that, yes. He was very quick. Hands of a point guard.
Thanks for the question. And yes, I've seen similar articles. I think in part, this is obviously Department of Education for the whole country. I cannot confirm that we have an 87% increase in administrators. Actually, the only administrative position in this district that I can recall during my tenure was to look at the curriculum area, and for the whole district, we did a half-time position, and actually that was changed from a full-time principal position in Sutton. So we now have a half-time, part-time principal, part-time curriculum director. And then last year, the only net increase was an assistant principal and elementary curriculum administrator in New London, because New London is a school that has about twice the population of the remaining elementary schools and about 3 times the student population of Sutton Elementary School. So we felt it's needed to get a second administrator into the New London school to service 360 kids at the time, but we also did not put a full-time position in there. We made it a half-time administrative for the school and half-time for the elementary, all 4 elementary schools. So there's a net increase of 1 administrative position. We did restructure the facilities department and used existing personnel to change functions. So you could argue that we have now an assistant director of facilities, but that's not a net increase. It's just a reassignment of functions and responsibilities. So not 88% increase in administrators.
And when we were discussing last year in the budget process, or was it 2 years ago? I can't remember now. The assistant principal in New London, we did a benchmark to other districts. Do you recall that? And we were in line, as I recall, with our administrative burden compared to the total number of staff. Along with other districts.
Bob, you also asked what do administrators do. I think the picture has changed. The role responsibilities have changed dramatically in those 20 years that you reference. I think we have many more obligations to produce programs, reports, accountability, responsibility to supervise, to administer programs, to write reports for the state, and oversee the special ed department, all these needs that were not identified in the past, where it was perhaps sufficient to have a school principal, and the principal did everything in the school. Many more responsibilities put on public schools, disproportionately many more responsibilities put on schools that, quite frankly, teachers can't do. They have to teach kids in the classroom, so they cannot do the many things that we are asking administrators to do, such as be responsible for the operation of buildings, for curriculum, for accountability, quite frankly, of what students learn and how they learn.
And when you say this is accountability to the state predominantly, or is it to the feds? Or
it's essentially to the parent, to the student, to the local communities, and then there's also a lot of state and federal requirements.
The reason I'm spending some time on this, and that is, if we would look at wages and fringes in the general fund, is about $36 million in change goes that directly out of a budget of $51 million in change. And so it is a biggie. And with all due respect, you guys are the 600-pound gorilla. Without New London, we would not be here. I mean, let's face an absolute truth here. We could not afford this. And it's even now, the increase of the budget this year of 3.5 is equal to the budget of a number of towns in this area. And so it is scary. It is also the time. I want to share with you one of the concerns that I have. For the last 3 years, we have been masked. Little people learn by aping big people. If you do not give them any tells, there's no way they can grow. And we have paid an awful high price on this one. I can remember one meeting that we had, where I was attending one of your school board functions. A gentleman had 2 sons who were very good football players. He wanted desperately that this be recognized as a contact sport that could be allowed. There was a gentleman who was on the board who came in on Zoom, who unfortunately was older and had a number of pre-existing conditions, and was very much concerned about the fact that with the contact sport, this could be redound in very disfavor to the student population. The problem with that is I equate, unfortunately, at my age 82, everybody else age 82, and that ain't the case. It's one of the problems that you have because we all see ourselves as ourselves and surround ourselves with ourselves. You can't afford to do that, and I hope that all the limitations that used to be there for the little people, because little people are a hell of a lot more resilient than we are. And I do ask that one be a major consideration. I do thank you for your courtesy.
Bob, thank you.
I'll just quickly address that. We don't have a masking requirement at Kearsarge anymore, and the reason we don't is not so much our choice as it is that we have always chosen throughout this pandemic to follow the state guidance for public health from the state public health department. That's where we take our guidance, and that's what we follow.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Bob. Anyone else have any comment or questions with respect to Article 1, the operating budget? All right, I see you, Charlie. Anyone else have any first comments before I have Charlie go again? All right, now's your chance, Charlie.
One quick question. I think Bob sort of brought it up. We have a number of activities in the school system, and they do cost a lot of money. We have all kinds of activities in sports, entertainment, theater, and so on. What activities activity fees do we charge these students to participate in these things, which are costly to the taxpayers? In other words, what do the students contribute to the activities that they choose to engage in? Now, just to say up front that I have no problem with somebody who says, we can't afford it. A simple parent signature should do that with the principals of the school. But what activity fee structure do you have, if any?
Thank you for the question.
So we don't have activity fees like some colleges do, for example, that we charge each and every student that then goes to fund student activities. We try to cover a lot of activities through the budget, and we do that for equity reasons, and I'll get into that in a second. But that doesn't mean that there's not a cost, as all parents know, for various things that are going on in the schools. I just wrote a check for my daughter to attend a show, a traveling Broadway show in Boston with some of the theater folks. That was less than the cost of a ticket for most folks, but I think it was probably because it was a large purchase of tickets, and I wrote a check for that. We still have parents contributing part of funding to all sorts of activities, from rental of musical instruments to field trips sometimes to equipment for sports teams. The hockey program is the expensive equipment for playing hockey is mostly parent contributed. We also do fundraising for all these groups. I know the chorus and band trip to Disney last year had the mattress fundraiser right in the gym here, raised a lot of money to help offset some of the costs, but the cost to parents was still substantial. We try to minimize that for equity reasons, because while it is true that we can offer scholarships and contributions to families who can't afford it, I think we all know that there are also many families that just will not ask for that, and they would rather not engage in that back and forth process, even though we keep it completely confidential. That has an impact on equity in the district. In past years, there have been school building leaders that have chosen not to engage in activities if there was a cost to students because of the high inequities. When we did we did surveys a few years ago with regard to student voice in the district as part of our culture and climate review, it was clear that the biggest discrepancy in how children viewed how their school day went and whether they were comfortable coming to school was economic inequity. And those who are from disadvantaged families, honestly, they felt less safe in school, they felt less engaged, and they felt like they didn't have as much of a voice. And we've tried to bring that into our deliberations as a school board to try to minimize that impact as best that we can, because frankly, we're not able to, given the increase in costs in our district, we're really not able to pass along all the costs of activities to the district taxpayers. And we've chosen not to do that for a vast number of them. But we do feel when it's closely connected to the curriculum, for example, the Nature's Classroom trip that is done in middle school in non-pandemic years, and the trip to Washington, D.C., that the district really does cover as much of that cost as we can, because it's part of the curriculum and because we feel it's so important to the development of the students' learning. And we've moved in that direction. But that being said, it's certainly not, I'm not going to stand here or sit here and say, that we cover all the costs for everything because of the equity problems.
Thank you. Appreciate the response. Yes, come on up.
Good morning. Diana Dowd, Bradford. I keep hearing mental health of students and special ed and other things like that. How many counselors and full-time social workers does the schools and district employ per school, if you can be more specific, please? Thank you.
Social workers, we have 3 district-wide, 1 primarily at the high school, 1 primarily at the middle school, and then 1 at the elementary level that is supported by partially by the other 2. We have 5 psychologists, and we have a guidance counselor in every school, 2 at the middle school and 3 at the high school. So there is a lot of mental health, social, emotional support that's available for students. And their functions are also, particularly at the high school, obviously college and post high school career exploration. So it's not just social, emotional, mental support, but the school counselors' roles are really more to assess, help with small problems. They're not meant to be mental health counselors. That is really done with the parents and in the community.
But let me add to that. We also do try to facilitate that part where students are in need of mental health counseling in the community by making, now with telehealth, by making space and resources available to students to have private, confidential meetings with a counselor that's outside of the district and not a district employee that calls in and videos with the students in school. So, that's allowed, I believe, more access because you don't then have the responsibility and the obligation of going, leaving work, going to pick up your child during the day, taking them to a counselor, waiting for that to finish, and then bringing the child back to the school, which is quite disruptive and often will lead to missed appointments.
So how much would you say of the budget that actually takes, because that sounds, to me, like that's a lot of counselors throughout. I mean, that's what, above 8, 10 for everyone, for all the towns?
We have 4 schools, 4 elementary schools with 1 counselor each, and then 2 at the middle school, 3 at the high school. So yeah, there are also minimum requirements that we have to fulfill in terms of school approval, that we need to have these positions from the minimum requirements. So the state provides the regulation for us to hire these people and make those positions. So that is part of that. And I also want to say that our teachers, in large part, do a lot of this social, emotional, mental health supporting in their classrooms as well. So it's not like what teachers do is much more than just teach the academics. So they are the first line of defense, and they work in our teams, with our teams, support personnel that we have. So there is that coverage there, and the provision of those services is really driven by student needs.
Would you say that need has increased?
The needs have significantly increased, yes. And I think all of our principals, all of our teachers will clearly say that the pandemic has been a very significant impact on kids' ability to socialize, to deal with issues in school, in their lives. There was a significant disruption for 2-3 years. But overall, I believe that the needs of kids at all ages, be that elementary, be that even in the preschool, and up to the high school, have significantly increased over time, over the 30 years that I've been in education.
That's concerning. Mm-hmm. What do you think is wrong? Because it's... Yeah,
I'd rather not speculate, because I think we have to, as school people, we have to really look at what comes into the schoolhouse, and we deal with kids on an individual basis and whatever their needs are, and we work closely with families and get their support. Overall, I believe there has been a lot of push to provide services by the schools. And community health centers have gone away and have reduced. The state is trying to recreate and provide some of the services. We just had a conversation the other day to explore more of a mobile unit that the state is supporting, where we can get support from either telehealth or counselors, or hotlines that we can contact, that our staff can contact. But these are, I think, overall, you mentioned, the need is increasing significantly.
Is there a way that the schools can incorporate people's insurance into certain counseling that's beyond what the school should be responsible, beyond what the taxpayers should take on?
Yeah, only with regard to identified special needs student that may qualify for Medicaid. If that occurs, then those dollars are provided back to the district, and that varies quite dramatically from year to year. We don't even know what students have for Medicaid, and we probably shouldn't. Can you talk a minute about the social emotional learning curriculum, the SEL curriculum as well? Because it's not just responding to crisis, it's also doing those things on a day-to-day level for students who are not having difficulties, to give them the skills to handle difficult situations when they arise.
Yeah, we have a few years ago, in order to be proactive and not just responsive to, we have adopted a whole curriculum from elementary through middle school that addresses social emotional learning needs of kids. You know, simple stuff that how do I play with other kids? We can no longer just assume that everybody knows that. And there are issues of how do I express my needs? How can I work in a group? How can I take turns? How can I be a friend? These are questions that maybe when we grew up were not seen as important, but we have to be honest and see that a lot of kids struggle with that. And we as a school have taken that on through our curriculum that is administered by the classroom teachers. In the morning circle, we get together, we look at a topic and then discuss it and give kids an opportunity to learn and explore and practice. That's why the schools have really increased in what they need to provide and will be gladly provide for kids, because ultimately we all benefit if kids can be productive classmates and productive citizens.
Thank you very much for your questions. We appreciate it.
I also want to mention, too, that in the high school, we've taken advantage of opportunities out there to provide resources to students and parents. And Justice Broderick, who is speaking around the state about student mental health needs, depression, and suicide, came and spoke to the students for an assembly. He also did, along with a partner, did multi-day or multi-session video chat during the pandemic with parents that was advertised in the district. So, you know, those opportunities are there as well in the high school.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
That was all paid for by Dartmouth. So.
Wish to speak to Article 1? Anyone else for the operating budget? If not, I'm going to close discussion on the operating budget and we'll move to Article 2. All right. Let's do it. We're going to move to Article 2. Article 2 involves the Peak Collective Bargaining Agreement. Again, I'll read the article, then we'll have a member of the school board speak to it, and then open up for questions. So, Article 2, to see if the school district will vote to approve the cost item included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Kearsarge Regional School Board and Para-Educators Association of Kearsarge, PEAK, which calls for the following increases in salaries. For the 2023-24 school year, $207,818. For the 2024-25 school year, $193,048. For the 2025-26 school year, $172,993. And to further raise and appropriate the sum of $207,818 for the 2023-2024 fiscal year, such a sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new bargaining agreement over those who would be paid at current staffing levels. And I'll note the school board recommends on a 7-0 basis, and the Municipal Budget Committee recommends on an 8-0 basis. I understand Allison Maston will be speaking to this.
Good morning. I'm Allison Maston. I represent the town of Wilmot on the school board. The school board and the paraeducators at Kearsarge have reached an agreement on a 3-year contract for 2023 through the year 2026. The proposed agreement continues to provide modest but competitive salary increases and benefits covered under the collective bargaining agreement, or the CBA. The agreement makes changes to retirement eligibility by slightly reducing work hours for some employees, thus resulting in significant savings for both employees and the district. Additional higher deductible health insurance options will be available, along with phased adjustments in employee insurance contributions for individual, two-person, and family plans. The agreement also introduces a 3-year pilot program for potential savings via an insurance buyout incentive. Another 3-year pilot effort creates a professional development fund for a limited number of paraeducators to pursue teacher certification with district support.
Thank you. We'll open up for comment for anyone that wishes to speak to Article 2, the peak bargaining agreement. Come on up.
Sorry, I should have been up here sooner, but I didn't want to interrupt Allison. Once again, I want to thank the board and the Municipal Budget Committee and the administration, who I neglected to thank earlier, for their work to address a very significant issue, which is staffing. As you've read in the newspapers, we've had significant problems in education retaining employees and encouraging new educators and support staff in our districts. We've been very fortunate in this district to be able to retain as many as we have, but the state is approaching crisis situations in terms of being able to fill positions as they are being vacated. I want to applaud the creativity and the collaboration of the paraeducators and the board in terms of finding creative solutions to address the cost increases that could have been much higher in this area, and to address the significant needs and support that the paraeducators provide in this. They're a very important part of our ecosystem, so to speak. And again, I really appreciate the creative ways that both groups looked to be able to contain increases in this area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
I want to also thank the negotiating teams for both Peak and the district, who spent a lot of time trying to come to agreement and successfully come to an agreement on this CBA.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to Article 2 regarding the Peak Collective Bargaining Agreement? Come on up. And Charlie, let us know your name again in town. We know, but go ahead. For the record.
Well, one thing that puzzles me a little bit, did I identify myself?
No.
Okay. Is that over the next 3 years, you've actually gone down as an increase in a decrease in the amount of money to be made available for the salaries and so forth. Now, this sort of brings me back to the other part of this, part 1 actually, in Article 1, is that you've got additional teachers, an FTE added for the, I'm not sure where it's added, but anyways, you've also got 2 more for the Bradford preschool location. Maybe this was part of Article 1 that I should have brought up, but I don't understand this preschool business at all. I don't know what's going on there. Are we now responsible for students from the time they're out of the womb to the whatever? So I think we need to address that.
Charlie, do you have any questions with respect to this article, Article 2, about the bargaining agreement for the paraprofessionals?
This is, my concern is that it decreases over the 3-year period that these increases are to be in effect. So the actual amount goes down, down, down.
No, it's
which would be inconsistent with what I would think.
It's the increase that gets lower over 3 years.
Well, that's what I meant, right? Okay. So is there an explanation for that?
Well, there's the first year is the highest number because we needed to adjust those entry-level salaries for paraprofessionals, because we have had a significant difficulty attracting people to work for our kids, work in the schools as a paraprofessional. Our salaries for this kind of job were really not competitive with Dunkin' Donuts or Home Depot. So, and it's not, I'm not making light of that, but we have had actually people that left us because they couldn't afford to work for us. So there was on the bargaining agreement groups, both for the board as well as for the paraprofessionals, there was an understanding that we needed to raise those beginning as well as the salary levels for paraeducators significantly. That's why the first year is the highest increase. And then subsequent increases are smaller, therefore the number goes down in terms of the increase from year to year.
So essentially, we needed to catch up the first year and then provide cost of living salary benefit increases over the next 2 years. So it's that catch-up amount that makes that first year much higher. Also, I believe our contribution for health goes down percentage-wise over the years.
On the it goes up for the family and two-person plans to get closer to where teachers are. It goes down for the individual plans. But we also have a buyout option that if people do not need insurance, they can get a one-time buyout, which saves the district a lot of money, obviously. But it was in the salary area that we needed to make most of the adjustments and do that quickly in order to attract people. The other piece that was mentioned is, Mr. Pinard mentioned that. I'm proud that we were able to include in this new agreement a provision that encourages paraprofessionals to go on to get teacher certification. So to put some money into professional development for people that are already in our schools and love the work and then become teachers, because as Mr. Pinard said, the recruitment of teachers is significantly more difficult than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. So to find an avenue for people that make commitment to our kids to get to the teacher certification level, I think is a major component in that new proposed contract.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Charlie?
Well, this is a complicated area. So you may be stuck with the same problem next year. And so you're going to come back and just simply increase under your wages and fringes here, whatever you need in order to get through that particular year, regardless. So this is a contract arrangement here, and the front is what you need to do. Can we talk about the Kearsarge preschool in Bradford and what that's all about? Is that out of place here?
Anyone wish to speak to it briefly?
It's really not this article, but I'm happy to address it because it is a reason.
Well, I just point out that there's 2 FTEs added to that school. In other words, we're paying, I guess we're not paying for the building, from what I read here.
Well, we're paying.
We're going to be paying for all the operating costs and all the teachers and everybody else that go into there. And I think the voters need to understand what this is all about. Is it going to apply to the entire school district? Is every town or whatever is going to now have a new preschool?
You want to explain? So currently we have the James House Preschool in New London. But we provide services and are required to provide services for special needs students from the age of 3. The understood best practices way to do that is to combine the special needs population for those children with a cohort of non-special needs students to help model behavior in the preschool class. Due to an increase in number of special needs students, the ratio of special needs to non-special needs students has gone out of whack, to use a poor phrase probably, so that best practices is not sustainable. We have more special ed students than that school can handle, so we need to, in order to regain the balance of special needs to non-special needs students for those age groups, preschool age groups, we need additional space. To have all that space in New London is a disservice to the towns in the south part of the district. It's very difficult to have non-special, we bus the special needs students, but the transportation is provided by parents or for the non-special needs students, and it's quite difficult, especially, for example, I'll just give an example, a family living in Warner who work in Concord, to have to then transport a student up to New London for preschool, it just doesn't happen. Even for special needs students, it often doesn't happen very easily because it's a long ride. So the goal was to add that space, not in New London, but in a different location in the southern part of the district. We tried to do it in Warner. The property that we were interested in had contamination issues, so Bradford was the choice that we addressed the next year. Thankfully, ESSER funds were available to expend for the cost of the building, but you're right, there are going to be operating costs added in addition to that, but it helps us meet the requirements that we need for special needs students of the young ages, and also provides an opportunity for non-special needs families, students to attend those schools. They do pay tuition, unlike the special needs students who we cover the costs of.
Thank you. Charlie, anything else with respect to the bargaining agreement? Let's focus on that if you have any other questions.
I'm just going to follow up on this. Is this the same thing as the James House?
Yeah.
Which is in New London. So this has the same effect. We're going to be taking in students who need a little more to get into the regular school system. I just point out that, 10 years ago, we introduced kindergarten to the entire school district. So that was a cost increase.
Thank you, Charlie. Anyone else have any comments or questions with respect to Article 2? Yes, come on up. Let us know your name and what town.
Well, I'm Mike Bassett. I'm the assistant superintendent.
Oh, yeah, you are behind the mask. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry for my masking, but not feeling so well today. I just wanted to point out one small example that's relative to the article, and that is sometimes you have to spend money in order to save money. I know it's ironic, but this is one of those examples. And I think besides being the right thing to do, frankly, providing education to the 3-year-olds that are coming in, to Charlie's point, I think it's important to recognize that those children with special needs have to have those services met, and that costs money. And what will happen is regardless of whether we have the preschool programming in district or not, those needs still require being met. So were we not able to have the programming within district, we would be spending exorbitant amounts of money to either contract services or have those children go outside of the school district, which could triple, quadruple, or worse, the costs that are associated with them. But beyond that, it's also the wrong thing to do. We want those kids in our community. We want them here with their peer groups. So it also gives us the leg up in the future in that our service professionals who are working with those kids get a knowledge of those kids early, and we are then able to weave those kids into response to intervention programming, which then reduces, hopefully, the amount of time that we have to spend before they get to grade 3 to get them on target for literacy and numeracy skills that are on peer with everybody else, if that's possible. So we work really hard to bring those kids into the fold for a variety of reasons, but to your point, keeping the money low means spending money in advance in order to not have to spend money outside of the district.
Thank you for the explanation. Appreciate it.
First of all, what is the ESSER grant? Question 1. And the second question is, I think I was thrown off a little bit by the word preschool. It doesn't mean a lot to most people, I don't think, other than you're prior to going into the regular school system. So if that had a definition to it, maybe it should have been a little bit more clarified into this one piece of paper I found out on the outside there. So what does ESSER mean?
ESSER, I apologize, we didn't do the whole explanation. It's the third round of COVID and American Rescue Fund funding that comes from the federal government to schools and communities and the state. So we get that federal money to address needs that arise from COVID, learning loss, and pandemic-related issues. Every school district gets those, and the state got those too. And we utilize those funds to construct the preschool in Bradford. And preschool is really, it's an early learning program for kids age 3 through 5.
Thank you. All right, anybody else have any questions or comments with respect to Article 2, the collective bargaining? Yes, come on up, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry. You're next.
I'm Barbara Cooper from Springfield, and I'll be very brief, but I just want to express as a voter and a taxpayer that I really appreciate the board's attention to those in our community that are the least of us. I think when we pay attention in a thoughtful and careful manner, that the benefits extend to us as a society as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And sir, come on up.
Good morning. My name's Chris Boschman. I live in Warner. As far comment first, my son is affected with autism, so he goes through this program. We've had a number of conversations with Mr. Fennenberg, Mr. Bassett, as well as Ken on different situations. As far as the paraprofessionals do an outstanding job. My son has gone from kindergarten all the way now he is in middle school. He has had a professional one-on-one. In elementary school this year, he is a one-on-one, but that one-on-one is kind of stepped away, and we're moving him away from a paraprofessional. Not that we don't feel that that benefit continues to help him, but we're creating independence through the paraprofessionals and the teachers. For our son, I am an older parent. Sorry, get a little worked up with this. I'm an older parent. I won't be around for a long time for him. So I expect that hopefully at some time he'll be able to work independently within the community because of what people who work in the school system have done. So I appreciate you guys for that. Thank you very much. My comment for this is the number of paraprofessionals that we currently have, is that where we should be or you would expect to be? Where are we at right now with the number we have and where we would hope to be? As well as I believe, and I could be wrong, isn't a paraprofessional's current only qualification is a high school diploma and then a certification in paraprofessional working with these students? So if that is true, I commend you for trying to allow these paraprofessionals to get that certification moving forward.
Thank you very much.
To answer your questions, you're right. It requires high school diploma as a general minimum requirement. The certification as a paraeducator is optional. The state offers it. It's not a mandatory certification. And whereas the number of paraprofessionals, we have not been able to fill all the openings that we have need for and budgeted for. That was one of the incentives to really look at how can we improve that for the upcoming years. Okay. So yeah, we do have open positions, and we try to provide the services as best we can. And Larry Elliott, our special ed administrator, along with the other site-based administrators are working very hard to make sure every need is met, given the shortage.
Thank you. On behalf of my kids, I think you guys are doing a great job, so thank you.
And thanks for your comments, too.
Anyone else wish to speak to Article 2? Yes, come on up.
Bob Wright, Town of Sutton. In your sentence explanation, there is a phrase, this agreement makes changes to retirement eligibility by slightly reducing work hours for some employees, thus resulting in significant savings for both the employees and the district. And if you widen the circle, how can you could you flesh that out, please? Thank you.
So 3 years ago, in this current contract, we tried to provide additional time for a smaller number of paraprofessionals to service kids before and after the school day. So to be able to help them on the bus and essentially extend the day to a level where it then became mandatory to pay into the retirement system and provide retirement payment. We have analyzed that group of paraprofessionals and found that that did not really fulfill the expectations we had, and we found that we have other ways to address those student needs. So part of the negotiation was to reduce the work hours that we had 3 years ago, increased slightly to reduce them to what it was before 3 years ago, thereby no longer needing to pay for the retirement on the district's part, but also on the employee's part. So both parties then saved money, so to speak, by making that change. And that's the explanation we tried to put in there.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to Article 2? Last chance. All right, with that, we will close discussion on Article 2, and we will move to Article 3. Article 3 deals with the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. Once again, I'll read it, and then we'll have a school board member discuss it, and then we'll entertain comments. Article 3, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate up to $12,000 to be placed in the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund, established in 2008 within the provisions of RSA 198:20-C for the purpose of emergency funding of unforeseen special education costs incurred by the district, with such amount to be funded from unassigned and fund balances, surplus funds remaining on hand as of June 30, 2023. This is recommended by the school board 7-0 and the municipal budget committee 8-0. And I understand, I believe it's Bibi Hammond-Casey is going to speak to this.
Good morning. And that's not working. Oh, it is working. Okay. Good morning. In 2008, the voters established an expendable trust fund for the purpose of providing funds for unforeseen emergency circumstances in special education that may arise in a year after the budget has been adopted. If approved, this article will add up to $12,000 to that fund from operating surplus remaining on hand as of June 30th, 2023. The balance as of the fund as of July 31st, 2022 is approximately $360,386. The target amount to be raised is $372,139. So in years past, we have asked for $25,000 to be placed, and this year we will hit that target amount.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for comments or questions to Article 3 regarding the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund. Anyone have any comments or questions? Yes, Charlie Forsberg from Sutton.
Just to put things together a little bit, you've asked for an amount of money of up to $50,000 under Article 1. And this is a trust fund, to follow up on Bob's comment about capital reserve and so forth. It can come in and out as you need to. And you've asked for an additional amount under this article to be added into the fund with an amount to bring it up to $372,000. It isn't clear to me whether what you're asking for in the Article 1, $50,000, is actually coming out of your trust fund and so forth, or whether it's an additional amount. I'm unsure how you should work between the two. You could fill one bucket and draw it out as you need it, but and so forth. So anyway, a little explanation. I just want to make it clear that no comment that I make here and so forth is in any way to degrade or find deficiency in your education program. It's just clarifying things for taxpayers.
Thanks, and we appreciate that.
Thanks, Charlie. I understand. Again, the fund, as created by the voters, is for unforeseen emergency circumstances in special education that may arise in a year after the budget has been adopted. So the $50,000 increase in the budget is anticipated based on the current needs of the district. The trust fund money is set aside for example, if a family moves into the district that has an out-of-district placement, that we now become as a district responsible for that cost. It obviously wouldn't have been included in the budget because we didn't know that family was moving in advance, and therefore the money would either have to be covered by any surplus that existed because maybe a family moved out that cost the same amount, and then we wouldn't have to go into the surplus funds or the trust funds. But if that isn't the case, if no one has moved out and families move in that increase the cost without our expectation, then that's what this trust fund is for. We don't feel it is appropriate or even permissible to put the $50,000 that we anticipate as a cost that will be paid out of the trust fund that is established for unanticipated emergency special needs, out-of-district special needs costs.
Thank you, Ken. Anyone else have any questions or comments with respect to Article 3, the Special Education Expendable Trust Fund? All right, seeing none, we're going to move to the next article then. We'll close discussion on Article 3 and move to Article 4. Article 4 is the School Buildings Maintenance Fund. Article 4, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate up to $100,000 to be placed in the School Buildings Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund for the purpose of repair, unanticipated utility expenses, and maintaining the school buildings and equipment, with such amount to be funded from unassigned fund balance, surplus funds, remaining on hand as of June 30, 2023. School Board recommends 7-0, and the Municipal Budget Committee recommends 7-1, and I understand that Kyle Lombard is going to speak to this article.
Good morning. I'm Kyle Lombard. I'm the Sutton School Board representative. I sit on the Facilities Committee, so I've seen the costs of the repairs in the last year, and I'll tell you that's probably the biggest surprise I've had in this first year on the board is the cost of the facilities and the buildings that we have in the school district. And so our explanation is in 2009, the voters established an expendable trust fund for the purpose of repairs, unanticipated utility costs, and maintaining school buildings and equipment. If approved, this article will set aside up to $100,000 towards that purpose for operating surplus, from operating surplus funds remaining after the school year, June 30th. The balance of the fund as of July 31st, 2022, is just a crumb over $500,000. And we would like to, if possible, add $100,000 to that. We have 2 boilers at the high school beyond end of life that need to be replaced. We're hoping that they make it to this summer, and the price tag is going to be almost $1 million. And so we think, we don't know for sure yet. So that's where we're at.
Thank you very much for the explanation. Anyone else wish to have comment, questions with respect to Article 4 regarding the School Buildings Maintenance Fund? Come on up.
If you're going to use this as a trust fund to repair things which you have to repair, and you're looking at $1 million cost, should you not increase it now, or how are you going to handle that replacement, assuming that it has to happen? I understand that there's hesitation on that, but could you outline a little bit of some of the expenses that you've actually had this year on building maintenance and where your real problems are? I mean, what's really causing the big expense, maintenance-wise? You know, I know you have HVAC and all of that, but.
Yeah, good question.
And also, is Siemens or Honeywell, do they contribute? How do they contribute to that? Or do we pay them, or how is it handled?
Yeah, good questions. Can we ask the director of our facilities to speak to that?
Sure. Sure. Come on up. Why don't you come up to the microphone? It'll be a little awkward looking backward, but give it a try.
So in my time with the district, when I started back in April, there's been a significant amount of repairs to just aging infrastructure in the district. You know, for example, a lot of the equipment is from the year 1996, so we've exceeded its useful life. A lot of these are things that keep the school running, so boiler, HVAC, fire suppression systems, which have been required by local authorities. So those are the brunt of the repairs that I've seen since I've been here.
Thank you. Yes, come on up.
Take a stab at this one. I think it's important to recognize that the article is not about things that are in the budget. It's about things that may hit the budget next year that are unanticipated. So the purpose of the $100,000 is to take money that's unencumbered at the end of the year and get that up to $600,000. It's not because we don't see the cost of things that are coming. We know the boilers are on the fritz, if you will, and need to be repaired. But the board and the NBC have been working very, very hard to find alternative means and alternative funding to get those projects taken care of, some of which were embedded in the STEAM project that were voted down. But others, we realized when we changed from Honeywell to Siemens that there were problems within our facilities that needed to be immediately addressed. Some of those costs that we're talking about right now may be able to be covered through unencumbered funds at the end of the year, through municipal leases, other things that are going to be happening that will keep the budget down. But if some of those things go and we have unanticipated costs, if you look at the totality of the impact, it could be a lot of money. And so having that extra $100,000 sitting in that unanticipated trust gives the district the flexibility in order to cover those costs in the event that that unanticipated thing occurs. So this particular article is about unanticipated impact, not anticipated. There's a whole plan, a facility plan about how to get to those items and how to get to the ones that are thought about, that are upcoming, that we know over the next 2 to 3 years. This is about unanticipated funds.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Mark Dowd, Bradford. Just a couple of quick questions. Did you start with an assessment of the facilities, and do we do preventive maintenance on it? Probably a little unfair question, but has there been a lot of the, maintenance that's been put off? And basically, where we're at going forward as far as, the repairs are concerned. With this last question, the whole unknown maintenance is always an issue when you have aged 1996 equipment. Completely understand that. I guess going forward after this, would there be a preventive maintenance program put in place where you can do your assessments and capital expenses going forward?
Yeah, come on up and answer if you can, please.
If I could just make a comment too about that. We have always had a capital improvement plan that's part of our strategic plan for exactly that reason, to the extent possible, anticipate things that might break in the future so that we don't have surprises. So when our new facilities director and Mr. Parade started, it was also a time where we switched from Honeywell. Their contract expired, was done, and a new vendor was chosen, Siemens. At that time, we did a very thorough, comprehensive assessment of all 7 buildings that we have, and found some of the issues that some of them need to be dealt with very quickly, others within the next 3 or 4 years. So that's what the capital improvement plan addresses. The boilers is one of those situations that we need to take care of this upcoming summer. Obviously, we can't shut them down while we have school. So that's an immediate need to be addressed over the summer. And it is anticipated that we take about $200,000 from the expendable trust fund to address part of that expense. And the $100,000 that's listed here that comes out of unexpended fund balance at the end of the year would replenish that fund to 50% of what we take out.
Thank you. Very helpful. Yes, go ahead.
And I think quickly, just to answer your question about preventative maintenance, we're fortunate enough to work with a lot of great vendors who the majority, if not all of our equipment is on a preventative maintenance plan, which helps us identify capital needs moving forward.
Great. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the responses. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Joe Cardillo, New London. Articles 3 and Article 4, you're dealing with unanticipated or unexpected situations. So I know it's tough to project these things. Article 3 speaks to it a little bit clearer, that you had a target of 372. We don't see a target set in Article 4. My simple question is, when are the targets set? How often do you reevaluate the targets to say, perhaps we were shooting for 372, but under changes in economic situations, our target should be 400 for Article 3. Our target should be 750 for Article 4. So the simple question is, when do we set these, and how often do we reevaluate these?
Thank you for the question.
So the school board has a finance and audit committee that meets regularly, along with our business administrator and the NBC and school board members on that committee, along with the superintendent. We just looked at the fund balances. We take into account the likely costs, right, of unanticipated needs. You know, what the average cost is of an out-of-district placement, for example, what the history has been of use of the funds, and we do our best to estimate, you know, what we think a reasonable target is. We did not see a need to adjust the special education out-of-district trust fund. There's also, for example, a roof trust fund, a roof repair trust fund. That target was set back over 20 years ago, and we need to come up with a new target for that based on changes in expense and cost. But in order to do that, we need to have an evaluation done of the envelopes of the buildings. So that's something that we're looking at that might change. We have started, you know, one of the things we look at is how much have we used out of the trust fund in recent years, or even since it's been established. And we've been very fortunate because of the history and recent history of this district in reducing the out-of-district placements to be able to manage that cost. We also have gotten lucky, frankly, that we haven't had a lot of move-ins that were unanticipated, at least. So we haven't had to use the out-of-district special education trust fund, I don't believe, for several years, if even not in Superintendent Fenenberg's tenure. We have had to use money from the building repair fund, and we know we're going to have to use more. So, you know, $500,000 was the target. We're at that target now, but we also know that we're going to be probably pulling out $200,000 of that, which leaves us pretty short. If another boiler went unanticipated, we wouldn't have enough in there to cover it. So we would have to either use money that has already been anticipated in the budget to go to other sources, or come back to the voters and ask for a special session to appropriate more funds, which I know we never like to do. That's why we have the Special Education Out-of-District Fund, if anyone remembers. That was formed and established in 2008 because I believe in 2007 or 2006, we had a need to actually go back to the voters and ask for more money because of unanticipated out-of-district special needs expenses during the budget year. We don't want to do that, so we want to make sure that we have a bit of a cushion. The cushion is coming out. We try to make that to create that cushion through unanticipated revenue at the end of the year, as opposed to coming to the voters and asking for an additional appropriation of a warrant article. We try to take it out of surplus funds. We are comfortable doing that now because, unfortunately, we anticipate that there are going to be surplus funds. And you ask, you might say, well, why is that unfortunate? Because the main reason that we have surplus funds is because we can't fill all our staffing positions. So we anticipate, we set our budget based on what the needs are, with the hope that we'll be able to hire the paraprofessionals, the custodians, that will use all the buses that are in our contract, because we need to use the buses, but we have to have the drivers with our contractor to use those buses. So there are a lot of positions that we anticipate are going to be unfilled. We see that already. We're halfway through the year. So we're going to have a budget surplus, and that's why we're comfortable taking these funds out of budget surplus, because we're pretty sure we're going to have them because of, inability to hire people that we've already appropriated funds for.
Thank you for the question and the response. Anyone else wish to speak to Article 4 involving the school buildings maintenance fund? Anyone? All right. I see no one wishing to speak. With that, we move to Article 5, which is simply allowing for any additional business if the school board has any to bring forward. I'm not aware of there being any. With that, I believe we will call our session to a close. I want to thank everyone for coming out today, for your good questions, and for the boards, both of you taking time to come and help us today. So with that, oh yes, coming up. A question, comment? Don't want to adjourn, want to stick around for a while?
Just a quick question. I have a lot of elderly neighbors, and for 7 towns I think we are, there's not many people here. How do people vote when they're not here?
Yeah, for the deliberative session, where it literally is a discussion-based format, they are not here for the discussion, so they're not able to participate in that. But all of these warrant articles will be on the ballot for all of our town meetings and for our town votes. So everyone will get an opportunity to vote on them. They just won't have the opportunity to have the discussion that we had here today and hear the school board and others elaborate on what this all means for the district.
And we are recording the session, so those who wish to get that information, even though they didn't participate, will have the opportunity to do so. The votes themselves, if someone had proposed an amendment to something today, then we would have voted. But the vote itself takes place in March, on the second Tuesday.
That's correct, yes.
So.
Yep.
And are the schools financial public? Like, can we look at how the budget is spent year to year?
Absolutely. Every penny is accounted for. As a public school district, all our budgeting decisions, all our expenditure decisions are made in public, at least above $10,000 for an expense. It needs to be approved by the school board. The budget sessions that create the budget are all public meetings. They're all available on Zoom participation as well. If people can't attend in person, that's both true for the MBC and for the school board, and we strongly encourage people to participate. We do want to hear your voices, your ideas, your thoughts, your concerns, because it matters. It really does matter. It's not an easy process to put together a budget to run an operation of 7 buildings and multiple schools. It takes a tremendous amount of work from admin, from the board members, and from the MBC members, but also from the public, because this is a public school district. These are public funds. We feel very strongly that we should be able to account for where the taxpayer money goes and justify it for people who have questions about it.
And just for the record, where would someone find that information?
The website.
On the district website.
It's on the district website, or if you have a specific question, you call my office or the business administrator's office, and we can provide you with that information or sit down and answer your questions.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Just for the record, you asked before about the psychologists. I misspoke. You have 3 psychologists, not 5 psychologists.
Okay.
Thank you very much for raising the question about participation. I appreciate it. Anything else before we adjourn? Charlie, your last word, is that what you're asking? What do you got, Charlie? What do you need?
I'm going to follow up on the lady's comment just before me. She has no vote on the operating budget. We all know that. All you can do is vote yes, which is 1 vote needed to pass the budget. Now, this was something that was put upon us by the New Hampshire Supreme Court in its well-reasoned argument years ago. And unfortunately, it has been nothing but a fraud upon the district for all these years, not to let the district voters express their sentiment about how the school is operated. That's a real tragedy.
Thank you, Charlie.
I just want to respond in one way. The district sets its budget and has the article set up like it is, with a number from the school board and a number from the MBC, based on the district charter. The district charter is available for amendment. It can be amended either by petition or by action of the school board to bring before the voters for a vote to amend the charter. But we set up this system as, we didn't set it up in terms of the school board or the MBC. It was the voters of this district, when it created the articles of incorporation for the district, that sets forth how we, and the timing that we use to create the budget and go through the budgeting process.
Thanks again, everyone. With that, yes, Charlie.
I don't disagree with what the gentleman has said.
Good.
However, when the Charter Commission was created back in 97 or 96, I guess, to amend and create this independent form of government by authorization of our illustrious General Court, they did not know what they were doing. And they did not and could not anticipate what the true effects would be of how the charter was written and carried out. This is unfortunate. To change the charter, I know of somebody who tried to do so, but it was a rather long and tedious process which ended up in what we got. So I stand by what I said.
Well, on that point, I want to thank you for your questions, Charlie, and your comments.
The school board could authorize another committee to change it. Will they do that? Of course not, because it's only in their favor the way it is.
Thank you for your comments. Folks, I want to thank everyone. Comments even like Charlie's talking about the history of the charter, what the budget process is, questions asking about participation, they're all fantastic. That's why we're here. So thank you all for coming and taking the time to participate.
One last thing.
Yes.
One last thing, Dirk. I wanted to specifically thank the volunteers from the 7 towns who came in to check in the voters this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here early and often and every year.
With that, folks,